Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only ourselves anyway. We'll see how we get on, and we will edit out whatever doesn't, like if it doesn't like go very smoothly, if there's like hiccups, we can edit out those hiccups. But they might be quite just human, you know, as well. They could just be, oh, you know, yeah, okay. Right, I'll let these other guys in because they're all waiting like mad.
Okay.
So they're all going to join in now with their. Hello, everybody. Hello, Noel. Hello, Martha's dog. Hello, John from the Nurse Center. Hello, Paul. Hello, Orla. Hello, Anne. Hello, Moira. And Katrina is just coming as well. You are currently on mute because today we're going to be recording the session, and just so that we can kind of keep things nice and organized. So today, as I say, it's going to be recorded. There's a wee bit of information there in the group chat, so you can kind of see there the kind of outline. So myself and Tina and Marian will be chatting first for a little while. And then once we finish chatting, we really want you to get involved and for you to ask questions. So in order to do that, you can either raise your hand, your actual hand, or there's a little button down there where you can like raise your hand like that or wave like this. And then I will know that you want to ask a question and I'll unmute you. So, hello. First, we're going to speak to Tina O'Connell. And Tina O'Connell is an artist who's based down in Clare. And she makes all sorts of work. She mainly works painting in oils. But recent works as well have been in sculpture, especially the work for this show has been in sculpture. She definitely has a knack for it, and in the case which you'll see now in a minute, it seems to be no medium that is beyond her control. So I'm going to hand over to Tina, and she's going to tell you a wee bit about her work, which is called Facing the Future. Tina, hello.
Hi, how are you? Yeah, so I suppose I'll just start with just getting involved in the Drawn from Borders project. I suppose I was drawn to doing it because I had done a project when I was about 16 called Cooperation North, and that was my first exposure to Northern Ireland. And I met kids 16 about the same age as myself, and I got to hear their stories and hear what their upbringing was like, and some of them were pretty horrific stories. And I think possibly growing up here, I was probably a bit of a one for wanting a united Ireland, and you know, had all these ideas as a young teenager, and that kind of really just shook me when I saw what they were going through up there and what their lives were like compared to my own. And I kind of just really changed my attitude that peace was more important than anything else, that was what was really needed. And so when I saw this project come up, I really wanted to do it just to see what the differences are now and what it's like since the border was gone, because I really haven't had too much of traveling to the north since, only maybe just going to the ferry and stuff. So it's been a great experience. I have had a lot of research put into trying to come up with my idea. I had looked at lots and lots of interviews that were done on borderlines. Also, Aftermath Ireland had lots of stories of people from both sides during the conflict, and accounts of the conflict was a project done in Cork at the University of Ulster also. And I think just listening to all those people's stories, everyone was wanting, at the end of the day, wanted peace was the main thing. So, and to be without a border, so there was a freedom of movement. So this kind of made me focus on, like, I wanted to point out the past so that the people can see the past, but as a reflection, so we don't forget about it, because it's important that we don't forget so that we can move on and learn from it. And then the heads were all pointing in the same direction, looking to the future. And I suppose when we started this, it was Brexit, and what was that going to look like and what was going to become. We didn't know really when we started this project what was going to happen. So I think that's where the idea kind of came from. And we did a little, I don't know if you remember, we did that little lesson one day with the borderline, and we had to continue drawing the borderline. And I had never really thought about the borderline as a drawing as such before. So we did that at one of our group sessions. And that kind of gave me the idea for using the borderline for making the table for this project, and using the shape of it. And all the heads would sit on the borderline of the table. So the underneath of the table is the past, the borderline is the line, which is a piece of land, and the heads are of all different materials to reflect all different personalities, all facing one direction, looking towards the future. So that's a brief outline. I can give you more, Rebecca, once you want to show the video. We don't know if I'm going to talk through it or not. We'll just see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll try that. So I'm going to try and show the video. So I'm showing it on my screen. And yeah, we're going to see if Tina can talk over the screen. So I'm just going to do that now. Okay. I think this is it. Okay, so you should see a black screen now at the minute. No, there. Yeah, are we okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
So all the different heads were made. The idea of there's 10 heads, and there's 10 counties, so on the border. So the idea really was that each of the heads is just representing different cultures, different ideas, people, you know, different races, different religions, and, you know, everyone is different is the idea. So that's the only way I could think of trying to represent that way in the best way I could was to use different materials for each head. So you could see there that there was turf, which was carved out of a soda turf. I made a plastic mold, which I used for the basis for using to make up most of the other heads, the wire and the paper mache, and that, like, the wood and the stone were carved using an angle grinder. So that was great fun and great experience. So then, you know, the table it was cut out with the jigsaw. I cut that out. I tried to do my best job of making it in the shape of the borderline. And then I used moss, which I had treated to cover the table to kind of give it a grassy look. So we're just moving to the underneath of the table now. So during the COVID lockdown, I couldn't find any mirror, so I had to get pieces of aluminium. The idea was to have broken pieces, you know, just when I visualized the bombings that used to happen, it was broken bricks on the ground. There was bottles used for firing it in riots, and they were lit, and broken glass, I suppose, and shards of glass. So I was trying to find some reflective surfaces to reflect these photos that were collaged on the bottom of the table. They were all just photos I found on the internet that I just put together to try and just show the time when the border was in place and the troubles that arose at the time. And so hopefully for the actual exhibition, I'll be able to find proper nice pieces of broken glass that'll clearly show that reflection better. Yeah, and my husband was very kindly made me these really cool legs for the table using rebarb steel. which we did kind of in a crisscross, because I was thinking that that is kind of like, you know, industrial looking and city kind of living kind of idea. So this is a view, an overview, just trying to get a view of the table, and it's done outside. I've plastered that wall since, so it looks a bit more decent now, but it was done as best it could just to represent my project online, on our online exhibition. So you kind of see it from the top there. That's my piece. I hope you enjoyed it. It's probably a lot nicer in real life because you can touch and feel the heads, and there's a lot to it. I know it's kind of busy. So I just kind of wanted people to see what they thought of it themselves before reading my blog at the end, because people interpret different things. So I want to let that happen first, and then you could read the blog at the end to see where my ideas were coming from.
Thank you very much for that, Tina. I was just thinking about, you know, whenever you were doing all that research and things, and like how did that all make you feel?
Oh, in some ways, I suppose I felt I think just being brought up the way I was brought up, I felt a little bit guilty for wanting all this, you know, United Ireland, when I saw how much all of the troubles over the years brought to all these people. And a lot of the, like, even some of the people that were talking were like previous IRA guys and, you know, RUF, and they were tough lads, you know, but they wanted to put their differences and thoughts aside just to be able to have peace again, and, you know, not that their next generation was going to be having to go through what they went through. And I just really like found it very, very moving. And yeah, it's just so important, I think, to not forget these stories, because I think this is how these things can happen again. And I wanted to show that in my piece, because it's being underneath, it was the past, but it's important to remember the past so we don't repeat it. And yeah, they were so, like, I think I was in tears listening to some of the stories. Like, it was just horrendous, horrific. There was this quote which really hit me. It was David from Londonderry. It was in the Borderlines program, and he said, no matter where you take us in the world, whether you are Catholic, nationalist, Republican or loyalist, there is a great affinity and love for this island, no matter what part of it you're from, no matter about the border. And I think that's the thing, we're like, we are all just people. We all live on one island, and we should all respect each other's beliefs and, you know, be kind to each other. Life is tough enough, as we can see with this COVID thing. It's been hard, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because some of those images, I mean, even though we're just having just a brief glance at them, really, I think it'll be really interesting when that piece is actually installed, and how that kind of affects people when they have more of a choice of how long they can spend looking at those.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you have them underneath the table, with the mirrors reflecting up the way. So it kind of requires people to make a little bit of effort as well, that they might see some of those, see some of the images and the text in the reflections, and they might actually have to like kind of bend down and look up the way to see it, which kind of, yeah, that they have to make an effort to look at the past, even though like it's like, yeah, I mean, even looking at those now, I can kind of feel the emotion welling up in my chest. And you know, I wasn't around for probably quite a lot of that, Yeah, yeah. The heads themselves, though, Tina, you made 10 heads. Tell us a wee bit more about why you made 10 heads and the materials that you used to make them.
Well, I made 10 because there's 10 counties bordering the border. So that's why I made 10 heads, and it just felt right. And then the actual process of making the different heads, my sister made this really cool ghost there a couple of years ago out of a styrofoam head. She covered it in cling film and then sellotape, and then cut it up the back, and then she had took out the styrofoam, and she had this clear head. Well, I have done so much with that idea since. It's brilliant. So you can stuff it with newspaper and you use it, you have a face, a mold. So I was able to make so many of the heads out of using that method. I was able to use it for the clay head, which was just clay, and I built it up around the mold, and I was able to pull the mold out afterwards. And the lace one was the same. The plastic one is actually the mold itself. Aluminium, that was torture. It was tin cans, like Coke cans and Fanta cans, all cut into strips and hot glued together. And that was a nightmare. The amount of blisters and burns I got from the hot glue gun, I was horrendous. That was definitely the worst head to have to make. The paper mache one was easy enough. That's just, you know, the newspaper and the glue. The wire head was that was again just shaping it around the head, and put a bit of wire mesh inside to kind of represent the brain. And the plaster, I did the same idea again, but I filled the mold with the plaster, and then I had a good bit of work afterwards to sand it down and to kind of fill up the gaps and spaces I had. The stone one and the wood one I carved with the angle grinder, so I had two different bits for doing that. So I have a lovely wooden piece for cutting with the angle grinder, and then I had one stone. It was just a masonry blade on that. I got a stone from out at the beach. We've loads of stone down here in Clare if you've never seen it. We're surrounded by limestone. And turf, I just went up to the bog and robbed a big piece of sod of turf that size. And yeah, I just carved that out using a knife. And then I just kept it in a trailer and kept covering it with glue until it stayed together. And yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm most impressed, I think, with the turf sculpture because it's not exactly a classic, is it? I mean,
No, I
there's not
suppose
really
not.
much in terms of reference points. You can't go to a gallery or museum and see turf sculptures too often. So I think that's the most impressive for me is
Yeah, well, it's actually funny though, because it's probably one of the most relevant, I think, for like representing people though, isn't it? You know, the people of the land having the piece of turf, you know, the farmers, the guys that like to go and make turf, and you know, it just kind of it did feel like we were reared going to the bog, and we had to sit on the big high trailer coming down the hill full with turf. God, and you think about it, like, and covered in midges. Yeah, so like that was just one of our traditions growing up, was getting the turf every summer. So yeah, turf had to be there as part of one of them. Yeah, it was all experimental though, you know, a lot of it was like I hadn't done any wood carving up to that stage. I hadn't done any stone carving. So, you know, I had done a bit with clay. I did a bit in college. So it was really like everything was a bit of an experiment. But what a great experience. Yeah, and I haven't stopped wood carving since, so it's brilliant.
Excellent, excellent. Tina, do you know, I could probably chat to you now for the next 2 hours, but yeah, but just on that whole experimental side of things, I'm really thinking about Marian's work and Marian's approach to all of this. Because when we kind of started on this project, Marian was talking about making this archive or this film from archive material, and I remember her coming to our meetings. So I'm really interested to talk to Marian a wee bit, and then what we'll do is at the end, we'll allow everybody to do questions. So if anyone has a question for Tina, just note it down, and then we'll come back and we'll have both artists, because there might be things that both of you bring up. So yeah, I'm just going to bring Marian in now. And Marian, you're currently studying an MFA. You've been making all sorts of stuff throughout your life. And for this project, well, actually, I think maybe tell us a wee bit more about your kind of journey to here and kind of how all this happened. So you joined us last kind of summer, and you're studying, you're half in Maynooth and half in Kildare, is that right? Hello, Marian?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So tell us about your kind of journey. Tell us about what you've been making and what brought you to this point.
Okay, thanks very much, Rebecca, and thanks, Tina. Well, my journey to the Drawn from Borders project has been quite different to Tina's. I hadn't previously addressed any aspect of the Troubles in my work, as I always felt I didn't know enough about it, and I didn't feel qualified to speak on it. But 3 things happened last year while I was living in the UK to change that. At the beginning of the MFA in Kingston in London, the class was working collectively on a project on the theme of entrapment. It generated a lot of discussion on the subject around who and what was being kept out or kept in, and how this was managed. This led me to explore the concept of gatekeeper. Who chooses the gatekeeper and who decides? My project for the module developed into an interactive piece around the concept of the peep show, examining the question of who is ensnared within the context. At the same time, the debate on Brexit was raging around me in the UK. On all media, the question of a hard or a soft border for Northern Ireland was debated. The economic repercussions were endlessly discussed, with very little mention of social or political impact of this outcome, or any mention of the Good Friday Agreement. I couldn't believe it. Then one day I happened to be working in the library in the college in Kingston, and 2 young British students were working beside me. They were planning a weekend in Dublin. One friend asked the other, "Is Dublin in the UK or the Republic?" Her friend did know the answer. Then she asked, "Do they use sterling or euro there?" Again, her friend knew the answer, but the incident finally shocked me into action. Around this time, the Drawn from Borders project called for interested artists, so here I am. I began my research by watching all of the media coverage I could find on the web for the 30 years of the Troubles, from 69 to 99. And my aim there was to try to get an idea of how well informed or otherwise the British public had been by the news media. This led me to start working on creating a short Flickr film. I was putting together a collage of short pieces from the news clips taken from over that period. Now, I plan to submit this for the Drawn from Borders exhibition, which is now postponed. Then the option came up for an online exhibition. I didn't submit my Flickr video for this because part of for the exhibition will actually be included in a larger installation. and this didn't really fit into the online format. So I went back to the drawing board and had a look at my earlier theme of entrapment, because I had done a lot of thinking around enclosures and how they can be breached, and that whole area of cages and barriers and borders. And out of that came my 3 monoprints in the exhibition, entitled Late to Reinstate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marian. I'll just show you I'll show you the prints now. There we go. So this is just from a screen grab from the virtual gallery. So yeah, it's quite obvious when you talk about this entrapment and everything that these are those familiar fencing that we find, that also appeared in Orla McKeever's work, who's part of the exhibition. I don't know what it's called. Do you know what it's called? This kind of that's what it is it, Marian?
Oh no, it's an abstract concept.
Oh, okay.
But it's the idea of a cage or an enclosure or a border, call it what we like, that was there, and the remnants of it is still there. Now, it's obviously not capable anymore of functioning as a border, yet it's not gone away. We still have the physical echo of it there, and yet it's not capable of functioning, and it's too late to reinstate it. So it was really referencing, I suppose, the physical manifestation of what had been a border, while it's the physical presence of it will be there for generations to come, as will the memory of it. So I felt that it worked on various levels.
And the architecture of it, the architecture of the border. I mean, they took down the watchtowers, but those of us who kind of lived around or near them, and also the customs places, we still remember those, and there is still some remnants of some of that architecture around. And the fences and the barbed wire still exists in places, but you know, like over time nature will kind of take over those architectural structures that are just kind of left, but they're still there, as you say. Yeah, this is really nice. So these are screen prints, are they?
Oh, no, they're not. They're actually found printing,
Okay.
and they're monoprints. And they're printed from a variety of found objects, quite literally.
Wow.
And with acrylic.
And you did this. Do you have a studio at home then?
Well, as you mentioned at the beginning, I sort of have 2 lives between Maynooth in County Kildare and Westport in County Mayo. And I tend to, because Westport is where I live in, is on what would have been my parents' farm. Of course, there's a lot more space, so I have studio space there for the kind of work that I can't do in an urban environment in Maynooth.
Yeah. Space is so important, isn't it? Whenever you're making, I mean, like, you know, to be able to create these kind of things. I mean, often, you know, you kind of end up at the kitchen table, kind of making stuff, but yeah, it's good to have that space too, to be able to experiment and create stuff. I think these are really beautiful. I had no idea how they were produced. And to me, they kind of they really kind of reminded me of those kind of really horrible fences that there are, that you kind of, they were kind of spiked at the top as well, and you end up like you're always climbing over them as well, and like getting cut or trying to get through them. Yeah, they didn't really seem that strong, really. and often a little bit kind of broken like this as well. And then the kind of imagery behind kind of reminds me of like this beautiful secret garden or something that is beyond, you know, the kind of grass is greener on the other side kind of idea. Yeah. Where did you know the imagery behind the, I know it's an abstracted image, but is there, like, where did that kind of come from, or can you tell us more about the kind of colouring and the imagery?
Well, you just explained it really there a moment ago when you said about the idea of the concept of freedom. And when we think of freedom, we think of light and colour, of course. But the colours are deliberately pale and delicate because they imply infinity, and it's deliberately abstract because freedom is an abstract concept anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really eloquently depicted. I mean, yeah, just really beautiful work. And do you think that you will, I know you're putting the Flickr film, which will be a kind of installation. Do you think that we'll have an opportunity to see these in real life? I mean, I know the virtual exhibition has been great, but there's nothing like being able to like go up and actually see the real artworks and know the exact dimensions of it, and even like smell the paint or the paper. Do you think that these might possibly be part of the actual exhibition as well?
Oh, there's no reason why not, providing there's space for everybody and so on. Yes, of course.
Yeah, I think it would be really nice to see them. Yeah, both you and Tina. I'm just gonna head back to you now. Both you and Tina had that kind of issue of your initial ideas for the project don't really translate into this kind of virtual space. And for Tina, we did this kind of she made a film of her sculpture. And for you, you changed completely and made these prints. Do you think you would have made these prints anyway, Marian? Was that part of your process, or?
I can't really answer that, but I do work with monoprinting and found printing sort of on an ongoing basis, and it depends on, of course, what else I'm working on at the time. But as I was doing that, and when I was working on that project in the UK for the enclosures and the entrapment and so on, I realized that in fact I had been working on the idea of containment and the inner and the outer and the border between. Since I started working, since I left college and when I left school, I had been working, it's a theme that had appeared and reappeared in various forms. And, you know, I suppose at the end of the day, we only ever have a couple of key themes and we spend our life trying to struggle with them. So, yeah, I realized I was back again, you know, covering the same ground from a different direction. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is strange that, you know, because you at the start of your practice you don't think that that's how it kind of works, or you kind of yeah, your artist statement changes over time, but then you start to realize actually there's like themes that are kind of consistent themes. Oh, Palisade is the name of that the fencing. Orla, our resident architectural expert, has notified us of that. Thank you. Oh, what is found printing? Martha is asking found printing.
Well, it's basically inking up anything you can find and making an imprint onto the page.
Oh, okay. Yeah, which, Martha, you're familiar with that too, actually. You're a mad fan of the found printing. Maybe you just didn't have a name for it, but now you do. Just on that note, then, what I might do is just if people have questions, so both Tina and Marian are here, and I'd like to kind of hear from you guys. You can either, as Martha done, you can either type the question in, but I think it would be much nicer if you can have a conversation with the artist yourself. So I'm just going to flick through, and you can just raise your hand if you have a question. Oh, there we go. I'm going to unmute you, Yeah, okay,
I was very interested in the positioning of the images from the past, Tina, in your work under the table. And it's almost, I suppose it's coincidental that they are reflected in the mirror. And what struck me was you're inviting people to reflect on the past and also to look forward. So I found that was very interesting. And I wondered whether, because they might be difficult for some people to see, like people like me, you know, because you'd have to bend down quite low to see them. I wondered if you'd considered maybe producing them separately for people to look at.
In what way, Anne? What do you mean?
Just in a paper, I don't know, a poster or
Oh, yeah.
pages that you could flick through maybe.
Okay. Yeah, that's possibly a good idea. The only thing is, when we actually have the exhibition, I will hopefully have proper bigger pieces of broken mirror, so that will reflect it better without you having to bend over.
Yes.
So that would be the hope, that, you know, that I don't want it to be too much of a struggle, but I would like you to be, you know, move your head to look and see without having to bend down, hopefully.
Yeah.
You know, that there'll be enough pieces there, and that the, you know, their actual reflection will be more visible. But it's a good idea. Possibly, yeah, it might make a cool poster as well, maybe. Yeah, you could see. Maybe that, or have a little book beside it or something, and with the pictures, the images.
The other thing is, I was wondering, because you said you thought visitors would be able to touch the heads, and I just wondered if that was a good idea.
Yeah, well, for certain heads, you know, for like the wooden and the stone and the plaster, just feeling them is so nice. You know, people can't help but touch. I'm doing lots of wood carving at the moment, and I'm just constantly just touching the wood. It's just, there's such a beautiful feel to it. So I don't mind, like, you know, people have to clean their hands as well now. So thanks, Anne.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you. Yeah, anybody else? I have to like flick over and back, so you can have to wave quite largely. Let me see. Are you all being quiet now today?
Can I ask Marian a question?
You could ask Marian a question, certainly do.
Marian, can I please ask you about that mushroom hat? You wear it all the time. Please tell us about that hat.
Yes, certainly. I think of it as my Zoom hat. I found it in a wonderful craft shop called The Glass Doll in the village of Maynooth. And because it's in Aladdin's cave, for anybody who's interested in any kind of materials, I go in there quite often, and I would always look at the hat and sometimes try it on. And then one day a friend of mine was in there with me, and you know, we were trying on half the hats in the shop. And I found when I was leaving that I had this hat in my shopping bag. She had quietly bought it behind my back. Because clearly I was mad about it, but I hadn't it's not the sort of thing you go into a shop and buy for yourself normally. So going with that gift was a dare to wear it in public. And really, I hadn't thought about it very much. I had thought that I could perhaps wear it to an exhibition of my own work, you know, in due course when I get that far. But I thought it wouldn't be fair to wear it to a mixed exhibition, because I mean, it would just draw too much ridiculous attention. So I thought, well, you know, I'll have to think about having a show so that I can wear the hat. And then, of course, down came this nightmare on us all. And I found it very, very difficult, I have to confess. For the first 2 months, I know in my own circumstances don't compare at all to the torture and hardship that so many other people, both in Ireland and the rest of the world, has gone through. I mean, but for me as an artist, I found I couldn't create. I mean, you have all this extra time because you're locked at home, and I just couldn't do anything. There were days I couldn't even get out of bed. And eventually then when I started sort of crawling out into the world again and beginning to come back, I came across the hat, and I thought, well, if anything expresses how I feel about all of this, mushrooms growing out of the top of my head is just perfect. So I decided that while this virtual reality is the only way we can communicate, that I shall wear, as a sort of personal protest against the whole pandemic, I shall wear my Zoom hat until the day we can all meet, shake hands and hug as we would normally do.
Brilliant. Thanks, Marian.
And on this, just in addition to that, talking, it's just going back to the journey of our careers, I suppose, and how we go back to things. Maybe the reason why this grabbed my attention, as opposed to all the other wonderful hats in the shop, is that shortly after I left college, I actually partook in that absolutely wonderful, memorable stone carving symposium up in the Dublin mountains, that anybody who partook in it could never forget, with wonderful carvers like Tom Glendon and the late Fred Conlon. And I carved 3 limestone mushrooms.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, they're still in a private collection now, but they still exist. So without being conscious of it, I suppose that's why I was fascinated by the hat when I went into the shop. So, everything goes around.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it certainly does. It certainly brings a lot of I think it brings quite a lot of joy when we see you appearing in our Zoom meetings. Yeah, for sure. It's been quite talking about this kind of journey and our involvement in the Drawn from Borders project. I'll ask both of you. I get just broadly, I suppose. Is there how has being in the project affected you? I know you were doing all this research, but was there anything that came up from being part of this project, from being part of this group of people that did anything, sometimes you have that kind of penny drop moment, Noel was saying, whenever he realized that actually he's a product of the border, and he kind of hadn't really realized that until having that conversation. Did you have any experiences like that with the various talks that we had and workshops that we had? Did any of those kind of strike you at all? Either of you?
I think when we had the lady that came, I can't remember her name, Rebecca, that was working in the school, in the primary school.
Kate Nolan. And Kate Nolan is actually, she is also the same artist that did, the borderline, that you were doing.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I knew her, I recognized her name. But she, I think when she was there and she mentioned about the kids not having any idea about a border and having it hadn't been told from their parents, it doesn't get talked about, the physical border being in place, and she was saying that maybe a border might be put back in place again. And you remember she was saying the story about the little child going, what do you mean I'll have to cross the border to go and get my Chinese, because she lived on the other side of the bridge. And I just thought, I was so amazed that these kids are brought up now that they have no recollection, no knowledge really of there being a border. When I think to back when I was 16 and doing that project with those other kids, and the troubles. Like, they're the same age as me. I'm 42 now. They must be around the same age. And what they were being brought up in, and the experiences they had, isn't it wonderful that they don't actually have to experience that now, that physical border and the troubles that was there. It just really hit me that how wonderful it is to have peace. That definitely was one of my highlights, I think, listening to her stories. Yeah.
And I think it's really, I think her project is really important to discuss that with those children and document that, because maybe we kind of see things differently, or we forget things, or because our experience includes an existence where there was a border where you did have to like queue up and have a gun pointed at you if you wanted to go from one side to the other, and so forth, that it's really interesting to have these conversations with these young people, and to find out what their perspective is on it. I think it gives us a bit of hope, that things can progress. She was a really great person to be part of the project, and very generous as well with the whole thing. No, I'm really glad that that we got her involved. She also presented at another project that some of us went to, about the kind of history of the border, and about oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it now. Somebody will remind me. Janet was there, and
wasn't it, I think?
No, it was in Derry actually, and Adrian Grant, who the historian who
he was excellent as well. I got so much out of him as well. I thought it was a great way to start the project. Was to sit down and listen to him, talking about the history of it, which a lot of the information he gave us that day I never even heard of really, or was no focus on in the history that I learned growing up in the Republic, which I found quite amazing as well.
Because he just gave us facts, whereas we were given history books that were written by whichever side wanted to present their and he just gave us the historical facts of the situation, which is unusual. Marian, how did you was there any, you came down to Clady, didn't you, and you were because it's very difficult, as both you and Tina also live quite a bit away from where this project was based. How did you find coming back up to the north, and or had you been up here before? What had you had much connection with Northern Ireland kind of before this?
I had, of course, been to various parts of the north for different projects and different reasons, and short breaks and so on, but I hadn't actually been involved formally in any art activity. I found the information, as Tina described there, that came to us from all formal presentations and exhibitions and discussion. I found it, of course, very, very informative. But I also found, in fact, more so the interaction with Northern Ireland artists, like particularly in the informal groupings over lunch, and when people would be, just telling anecdotes about their lives growing up, and how the border impacted on them. And I mean, again, like Tina, these were things that I would never have any experience of. They had never crossed my mind. And so in many ways, at the end of it now, well, I mean, I know we're not at the end of the project yet, but we're not mixing and meeting really yet. Again, I felt much better informed on the whole subject, of course, but I also, on the other hand, it made me realize that there is no end to the depths of my ignorance on the subject either. So I felt both actually, that I'm still very much tipping the iceberg when it comes to gaining any real insight into the whole experience of people who actually lived it. So yeah, from both sides, but it's been a wonderful experience. I really am so very, very glad that I participated.
Yeah, we're very glad that you did too. It's been wonderful having you as part of the group, and I can't wait to see the film and installation that you're making for the upcoming exhibition. And I'm really glad that you are coming and talking about your work. It's really interesting to find out about the process behind it, and the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper idea, and it's funny that that you mentioned Peep Show, because do you remember whenever we were talking about the virtual exhibition that we thought that some of the films might be shown in that kind of way, in a kind of Peep Show kind of format where you kind of look through a little letterbox into the film. Thankfully it didn't end up like that. But yeah, that's an interesting kind of coincidence, isn't it, really, that happened in that way?
And you know, Marian was saying there about being since the COVID lockdown and just the lack of ability to get up and get motivated with doing the artwork. I think we were definitely not on your own in that respect, Marian. I think a lot of us and my friends, a lot of artist friends around here, they all felt very much the same way. But it wasn't really until we started our Zoom talks on a Wednesday, we started meeting up here with the Drawn from Borders group. It really motivated me to get going and get at it and get going again, because I definitely was struggling for a while there to just get, I mean, I know I was up to my eyeballs with kids and doing schoolwork and stuff, but like, you know, come the afternoon when I was finished that, I was like, yeah, I should be doing something here. And yeah, was doing anything but. So yeah, but once we had our meetings, then it just felt like, you know, that was the little push I needed to get back at it and get started. So thanks everyone.
Yeah, there's nothing like a deadline to get motivated.
Yeah, it was great.
Even though we didn't really have a deadline at the start.
No, it didn't feel like we were very.
We had a notion.
Yeah, and you just felt you had to try and get some stuff done and get things done. Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Speaking of the group, you've all become very shy today. But has anyone got a question? You can either ask it, you can put your hand up and you can ask it, or if you want, you can type it in the little box there. Orla just said it was the Border Heritage Convention that we were at, that Kate Nolan was at as well. That was a really interesting convention. Orla, do you want to say anything about that, or I'll ask you to unmute and you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, it was a really good. I suppose I sort of maybe connect it with some of the other presentations that happened as well. You know, like Trish, who came from the photography gallery, Trish Lamb, who came from the photography gallery in Dublin. You know, I really enjoyed her presentation on the borderlines. All the different artists' work, and Gareth Carr's presentation was fantastic as well. You know, just his experience of walking the border. And I suppose Kate presented at the Border Heritage Conference, and I was really struck by, I can't remember the name of the presenter, but he was into sort of nature and heritage, and talked about the wildlife. In Lough Foyle, and I suppose that was sort of one of the pivotal things for me as well, this whole thing around, you know, how nature didn't recognise the border, that it had no perception, you know, and how these migrating birds, wildlife, just moved, you know, from, you know, across Ulster really, you know, and so that sort of really cemented some of the ideas in my own work.
Yeah, and it's apparent in I think it's apparent in some of the in a lot of the other artists' work, and Tina's work. Tina, your piece, you have like dandelions and moss and various things as part of yours as well. And Marian, of course, that kind of, even though it's abstracted, it's that idea of it does imply a kind of secret garden or a kind of magical space beyond, that kind of breaks through the idea of the border. Guys, I'm chatting away here, and I'm realizing that we're kind of coming close to time, or kind of a wee bit over time. So I just want to say just like before I go, is there anybody? I'm just going to flick through and see if there's any hands up of people who have a question. Oh, there we go, John. Right, okay, I'm going to ask you to unmute. So John, there we go. You need to unmute yourself as well. There we go.
Yeah. Hi. Brilliant presentation by both of the artists today, and I suppose kind of new to all you guys. It would normally have been Paula who was liaising with your group, and she's been forced to take part in a different Zoom call at the same time this afternoon or whatever. But I'm actually delighted that has happened, and I've been able to join you. But do you see, for the two artists, I'm just was curious because I went away to college in England and stuff, and I was there. I met a lot of people from, well, all over the UK, but then a lot of people, further south in terms of within the Republic of Ireland and stuff. And I'm brought up really pretty much on the border myself. But I suppose I was just going to ask, do you get an opportunity within your own area, in County Clare or in County Mayo and Maynooth as well, to chat to other people within those communities about what goes on in the north? Because the perception I had was that people were nearly afraid to come up anywhere near the border. Do you know what I mean? They would come up maybe as far as, Donegal town, which is in the most southern part of Donegal, and then head back again and that kind of thing. And it may have changed in more recent times, but it was just something that came into my head when you were both chatting and stuff, because it's brilliant that people from I think it's so important that people from not just the border communities, either the Republic of Ireland border communities like Donegal, Monaghan, Cavan, but even further down, are involved in these types of conversations around peace building and reconciliation. Because, do you know what I mean? Sometimes the emphasis be on these areas, but I think it should go all the way down as far as Cork or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So sorry for rambling.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, John.
Well, I'll just respond to that first, if I may. Since the Good Friday Agreement, it quite literally brought a sea change in the attitude of travelling to Northern Ireland. It almost overnight, people felt much more, in the south, felt much more relaxed and comfortable visiting the north, for many of whom would never have been before. And obviously that has grown and developed and solidified over the last 20 years. But for us artists also, the VAI, the Visual Artists Ireland, because they have the Northern Ireland branch and the Southern Ireland branch, who are in some ways separate because they benefit from separate funding from the two countries, but they're otherwise a single organisation. And all of our workshops and now Zoom calls and artist visits are all 32 counties. And there isn't a big distinction as to who lives where or comes from, what their background is or anything like that. And so people are ceasing to think of the island being sectioned. Certainly amongst artists, I have found to be the case.
Brilliant. Well, that's really, really good to hear.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Tina?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with Marian on that. I wouldn't see any differences among the artist community, I suppose. For me and Claire, I suppose for going traveling up north, it's a long trek. So if we were going to go somewhere like, but you know, I have been a few times, and this summer we were only saying amongst our own family that we'd love to go up and take a trip up there because it's so beautiful up there. And I suppose I'd be more inclined to maybe go to Connemara or somewhere closer if I'm going with the kids to go camping. So, but you know, like, yeah, it definitely it's more accessible now. And as an adult with my own kids, I'd definitely be encouraging them to go up north if they were going for a trip. I have a son now who's 19, you know, and I'd often say to him, you know, why don't you do that? Go up north because it's so beautiful up there, you know, so because we're inclined to just stay either reasonably close or just go abroad, I think. But yeah, you're right though, we should be, you know, it's easy now, it's accessible now. We don't have a border. There isn't the troubles that were there when I was young at 16 having to go through a border. So yeah, it's definitely should be. And I think more of these discussions once they're up and they're on VAI, it just definitely brings more the artists together more. Yeah, because I felt a little bit odd. I was saying it to Rebecca about me talking on this because I was from Clare, and I felt should it not be somebody, you know, maybe from Northern Ireland or something speaking on it because it's closer to the border. And she said, no, you're part of the project and you've done the project, and you know, and it's true, we're all one, we're all together working on this project together. So
can I ask you, Tina, what did your, like, just following on from John's question, you said you've got a few kids, you've got like a 19-year-old and two others, is that right?
yeah.
Judy, how do you do it? Anyway, but what, like, did they talk about what you were doing on this project? What did they think you doing a project on the border? What did they think about it all?
Yeah, we've had lots of discussions. They're both, actually, the two older ones are quite interested in history, and the whole thing with Brexit has been an interesting topic in my household on occasions, because I think possibly the way they're taught Irish history here, they don't get the insight into maybe what Adrian Grant was trying to tell us. And I had to kind of reinforce in them that, you know, just because you like a united Ireland doesn't mean a united Ireland is the right thing for our country. And, you know, they thought with Brexit that maybe there was a possibility we could have a united Ireland again. And yeah, it's brought up lots of interesting discussions in my house because I've tried to keep them a little bit more balanced. It's just funny, I don't know what it is, but I don't know whether it's the way history is taught in the schools here, or is it just an overall attitude that happens when you're a teenager in this area. But it seems to be like a bit of a thing that becomes. So we've had many an argument and heated discussion, and I try to remind them, you know, that it's what the people want is what's the important thing, and that peace is kept is the important thing, you know.
Orla wants to ask a wee question there. I'm just going to, John, is that all right? Does that kind of...
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I was going to say delighted, and I suppose, you know, Mura alluded to it was in and around the time of the agreement I was in the UK, and, you know, there was guys from, I was playing in a Gaelic team and we had members from all over the country and within England as well. But it was it was just, I suppose, since that time it has got so much easier to come north and stuff like that, and that's a good thing. But in terms of your own installation, Tina, I mean, you have it under the table, and then I don't know if I've got this right, but it's right under the surface and nearly within our DNA, and I don't think, you know, it's not just, it doesn't serve like the 12 counties, it's from Mallinhead right down to Mizenhead and Cork, and there's some people it'll rise to the surface quicker and all, but all of that stuff, and regardless of what, you know, background you're from, if you're pro United Ireland or if that's not for you or against, you know what I mean? It can very quickly bubble up. And I think that the whole Brexit thing really did, you know, it was kind of like, where did this come from? It was a real spanner in the works. You know, we're moving towards this space whereby it's taken such, probably for some people, a long time. People would like things to move quicker, but you know, especially people on the ground in terms of doing peace building work, sometimes can get so frustrated that you have 2 steps forward and then 3 or 4 steps back, and you're kind of gradually plugging along. And then Brexit just came out of the blue, and you know, people that even had been planning this decade of commemorations project. Well, that's the project that we're involved in with the Nerve Centre, but it's been going on, you know, over the period of this day. No one foreseen the Brexit thing coming. It just sort of happened out of the blue, and then all of a sudden, you know, all this stuff under the surface started bubbling up again, and you have people on the borders, you know, doing sort of like protest marches and all sorts of thing. And you know, it was worrying for a while, you know. And you know, you had the 2 sides, and then you had the EU, and you had the can being kicked down the road up until, you know, pretty much when at the end of last year. And you know, it's still even gradually rumbling on now as we speak, although it's not as much in the fore because the COVID has taken on its life and stuff. So you know, it's still very live. And I think, you know, from just listening to your 2 presentations, and I was on and seeing the stuff you've done on Facebook and all, it's fascinating. I can't wait to, you know, get down and see it and all whenever the time comes. You know, and the different ideas that people have brought it and all as well, just from within the 2 artists today. I mean, I'm probably hoping there's more of these going on so that I can be a part of it. And you know, we got, like, they see like a very nice thing today from you guys in terms of Rebecca being able to share the videos and the images and that, and then being able to hear the actual artist. You know, for me, I've really enjoyed that, so I'm going to stop now and let someone else.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to, I think, Orla, did you still want to ask a question there? You had your hand up. I'll just have to unmute you. Are you there?
Yeah, it's not just so much a question. It was just on Tina's point. I thought was really interesting about you know, the how things are reported. You know, whether it's from an Irish or, you know, a British perspective. And there's a very interesting. It's a 2-part documentary that's on, and it's been made by the Irish Broadcasting Authority. I don't know if that's the proper name for them, but it's actually the British portrayal of, you know, the decade of commemoration of what actually happened at that time. The first one was on Monday night, and the next one, it's actually Michael Portello is presenting it. But it's sort of like it's from, although it's made by the Irish Broadcasting, it's actually from a British perspective. So it's very, very interesting and actually quite challenging. You know,
what's the name of the program, Orla?
I can't remember, but it's on RT1 on Monday night, and it's a hard documentary. The first one was on just Monday past, and the next one's on next week.
Okay.
But it's all the sort of British attitudes towards Ireland during, you know, from 100 years ago, during the Civil War. So
yeah, thanks.
Just while you're there, Orla, because you're originally from Limavady Valley or the north, and you're kind of living down in Cork. Is that right? So, like, whenever, because what was people's attitudes to you whenever you said you're working on this project? I mean, you're doing that as kind of a larger kind of thing, the kind of architecture of it all. And just briefly, if you know, can you tell us what is the attitude of people in Cork whenever you're talking about the crack that goes on up the north, like?
Well, I always get anecdotal stories about their trip to the north, which is always really interesting. So, you know, about most people that I would talk to whenever they hear you're from the north, they always say, you know, how long have you been in Cork? You know, and I've been here, 15 years now. And then they always tell me about their one trip to the north and the unique experience that they had which is like I'm ready to write a book on that, like the series of anecdotal stories. And I suppose like I am very interested in that sort of difference of how we're educated as well, because I obviously, you know, grew up in Limavady and went to school in Korean, and I think how we were taught history was, you know, especially Irish history was highly controlled. I believe, you know, our curriculum was highly controlled because it was such a contentious issue at the time, and you know, the people that I you know, my counterparts in the South, you know, other academics, they had a very different history, you know, education in Irish history. And I was watching it with that program the other night with a friend, you know, and to me, the conversation was very familiar, you know, this sort of British attitude towards Ireland. And this colleague who I was watching it with was really shocked by the language that was being used, and you know, to me it sounded actually quite familiar. So yeah, I think people are definitely opening up to visiting the north. But you know, 20 years after peace, and I'd say most people I talk to have either not been to the north or have made one visit to the north. So I promote it all the time, you know. So I should be working for the Northern Ireland Tourist Force.
Thank you very much, Orla. Well, just thank you. Like, I hope maybe you might be convinced to take part in an artist talk yourself, and other people in the group, because I think it's really nice to have these conversations. I think both Tina, just hearing more about how you developed this work and the research that you did, and that quote. Can you don't have that quote to hand again?
Yeah, the one from David from London. Yeah. No matter where you take us in the world, whether you're a Catholic, nationalist, Republican, or loyalist, there is a great affinity and love for this island, no matter what part of it you're from, no matter about the border. Yeah,
really, really beautiful. And that was just the guy on the interview. Yeah, it's really important that these stories are told. And Marian, just it was really great to get an insight into the background of your project and the ideas around the gatekeeper, and those kind of the kind of feelings of entrapment. Entrapment was the beginning of the project, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and kind of how those ideas kind of developed and are perceived by yourself as an artist, but also as ourselves as a group of people, of artists on the island of Ireland. Apart from Noel, of course, he's not on the island of Ireland right now, but who often is. So it's really great to have this really diverse mix of people, because I don't think we would have had these kind of conversations without. If it had just all been a group of artists from the Donegal-Derry border, I don't think we would have had these kind of conversations. So I'm very grateful to all of you for participating in this, and through thick and thin, everybody. You're wonderful human beings and inspiring artists. And just on that, because I don't want to keep you all day, because I know you probably want to get out into the sunshine and make use of the beautiful light to do some amazing work. I'm going to say thank you very much to Marian O'Donnell. Thank you very much for your hat as well and your hat story. Thank you very much to Tina. And thank you very much to everybody who joined in the conversation and participated. And as John said, we hope maybe to have another one of these artist talks. So if any of you do feel inspired by the great job that Tina and Marian did today, if you feel inspired by that, do just get in touch, and we'll see what we can work out. And if not, sure, this has been great so far anyway. So I'm just going to unmute you all, and you can kind of do maybe a wee round of applause. Let me see, can I do that? Hang on, can I do this? Unmute. Oh, I don't know how to unmute everybody. Mute all. Oh, there we go. So you can unmute yourself now if you wish, and you can do a little round of applause for the audience.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Cheerio, and sure, I might see you next week.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.